Awesome.
So he's been wearing his costume all week?
Yeah, you won't take it off.
Bryton, what's his name again? I forget.
Lincoln?
Oh yeah, Bryton's son's name is Lincoln. He's going to be a construction worker for Halloween. But you all don't, you're not going to dress up yourself like the foreman?
Maybe a construction cone. So we got these party hats that are cones.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. All right, well, let's get started, shall we? So we're recording, hi, all you wonderful humans. We're recording this podcast between Bryton and Ruth, and it's October 27th. It's about 10:15, and we are foot nerds. And today we're here and we're going to have a conversation about brainwaves, breathwork, and baseball. And I wanted to, Bryton and I we're both foot nerds in the foot nerd program. Bryton is a graduate, and I wanted to have this conversation with him because we share a lot of similar interests. We share a love of learning to meditate. We share a love of neurology and students of learning about the nervous system and how it works with meditation and breath. And we also share a love of adult recreational sports. So I wanted to talk with Bryton because he is a guy who plays in an adult baseball league, and he is a pitcher. And I was super interested in that because sports are a pretty specific way, in my opinion, to learn about ourselves. And in the Foot Nerd program, we talk a lot about self-awareness in order to reclaim like our own health and self-regulation. And so I'm particularly interested, like I love the idea of running and walking and all those things that come natural to our bodies. If we do them well, that we can do them for a lifetime. I love the idea of CrossFit and weight training and all these like sort of general moving methodologies. But I'm really specifically interested in people who pursue specific sports like tennis or like with pitching and baseball. It's one thing to get in the outfield and all the skill sets are variable, but pitching in particular is interesting to me because you put yourself in a position where even if it's just your family watching and friends, you put yourself in the spotlight. And more often than not, it's you have to regulate your stress and you have to get yourself all together, and then you're doing it in front of people, which nobody really likes to do that often, especially if you're learning and failing regularly. So I want to talk about how the sport specifics of pitching relate to like who we are as foot nerds and why are we having this conversation at all as foot nerds. So we study and we apply the study of sleep, food, movement, mindfulness, community to our actual lives, and we experiment with those as we reclaim our own health. And so Bryton, I wanted to ask you where you think this conversation about baseball pitching, brainwaves, and breathwork fit into those 5 pillars.
Awesome.
And then I'll tell you about mine.
So cool listening to you talk about this. I think it fits into all the pillars because it takes all of those focuses to, like deliver that one pitch or, do this one task. So you have to get your nutrition right, your sleep right, your mind right, get your mind right. But so it's dialing in all these different things and then experimenting and seeing what works for you, what works most efficiently, most return on investment, and what can be repeatable so you can do it over and over again. Mm-hmm. It is nerve-wracking, to be the center of attention and it all goes with you, but it's also, very exciting and, get your heart going.
Yeah, makes you feel like you're alive. Like I, as an adult, like recreational athlete, I've taken up tennis in the last couple of years, and just it's exhilarating, and it's also you just grow and learn so much about yourself and the world around you and community. And I agree with you that includes all of the pillars, right? So you especially, but it's so interesting because we're not doing this. We're not pursuing these sports in our lives as professionals. Like we don't get paid for it. And, these are recreational sports. So it takes a specific type of person who wants to take care of their nutrition in order to pitch in a recreational baseball league. That's right. It's recreational, right?
Yeah, it's recreational.
And there aren't that many actual recreational baseball leagues around that we know of, like certainly none in my community. But I think that this conversation fits into all of the pillars, like you were saying. You got to get your food right so you feel good and you feel fueled and you have enough energy, and you got to get your sleep right for those reasons. But I was thinking that it fits specifically into the mindfulness factor, the mindfulness pillar or mental health pillar or meditation, and then the movement, obviously, because we're using our bodies and moving, and then the community pillar, which I think is undervalued because you are you're with other people in person doing things together, which is so valuable. So with that being said, I wanted you to introduce yourself officially. Tell a little bit about how you found the Foot Nerd program and what and how you got here.
No pressure. My name is Bryton Zuelke, and I'm a physical therapist assistant by trade. I'm a father, a husband, and a foot nerd, if I wanted to boil it all down. And so my journey, I started in like orthopedics and post-operative care. So I learned a lot of exercises and, it targets this muscle, things like that. And then I moved on to a more neurological setting and also chronic pain. So we deal a lot with people that have been in pain for 20 years, something like that, and they're disabled, and there's no possibility that they're going to be out of pain. So it made me really look at movement and healing a lot different. So with the neurological aspect, just the developmental postures, like going through crawling and using the wall to stand up and things like that, is how you learn to walk. And all these exercises that we're trying to simulate walking, why don't we just do how we're built? And that that brought me to MoveNat and just natural movement and things like that. So I was working with that for a couple of years, and then that just led to I think I found out the Foot Nerd program Foot Collective, through Kelly Starrett. Posted something on Instagram, and I looked into all the information that they had, and I thought that would be the next step in my journey, and it was great. The Foot Nerd program really is great.
I like how you sort of move through your phases of learning. It seems like a lot of foot nerds are just really dedicated to lifetime learning. And you were involved in MoveNat for a couple of years before going into the Foot Nerd program?
Yeah, so it'd be a couple of years.
Okay. And then I'm curious just about, can we talk a little bit about your work? Because I think even though we've had a lot of conversations, I don't really realize the population that you work with, and specifically with pain, chronic pain. So can I just have like an idea of like the population and maybe like what you would do with one of the people you work with, like an example of how a session would go? Because I find that fascinating.
So I still see like post-operative patients, but it's mostly orthopedic injuries, so knees, backs, things like that. And then it's a different population where we see people that have been in pain forever, so my knee's been hurting for 20 years, my back's been hurting for 20 years, and they're really like getting these surgeries and it's not fixing anything. And they realize that it really doesn't matter what you do if you're not ready to receive it or if you're not in the right mind. And so we'll have PT is kind of a mechanical solution, like we can just work it out, and it really doesn't work like that. And the brain controls everything. And
I was just going to ask you like about my father-in-law, because, you're explaining and describing like, I just can't imagine what that must be like for you in a certain way. And I want to ask about pain meds too, because I think this will all lead into where we're going. But like my father-in-law has had like a ton of back surgeries, and then they nicked a certain nerve, like then he had drop foot, and then he had his toes operated on. And so he's in and out of surgery all the time. And was a farmer. Well, he still is a farmer, but he is addicted to pain meds. And it's like nobody is really talking about the elephant in the room. And when I go visit, it's like he's eating Vicodin like candy because he's always in so much pain. And instead of, I mean, he'll go to physical therapy, but he really doesn't do any of the exercises that they teach him at home. And then it just seems like it's perpetually surgery after surgery. And now when I go home, I look at the bottles of pain meds around, and I brought it up a couple of times, but I just wonder, like, what is that? Is that what we're looking at in the way of like pain management? Like people, like you're talking about chronic pain that people are never able to actually help themselves. So it's just a perpetual surgery assembly line,
And yeah, so the more surgeries that you have, the more it's like an injury. So your brain is basically protecting you to create more pain in your brain the longer that you're in pain. So it takes over centers or different parts of your brain that do other jobs as well, but it starts making pain more. So it gets you to stop moving and survive. So survival's first. So you're basically stuck in fight or flight all the time. And yes, I mean, people do want to get better, but they have to be able to put in the work, and it's really on you to do it. And you have to have hope that it's going to work, and that's the thing. We can tell people anything, but they have to believe it. And the longer it's been going on, the more, it's a defense mechanism.
Yeah. You brought up hope. And I would say that is exactly right. Like I get pretty sad when I see the situation that my father-in-law is in, because it does feel hopeless to him. He doesn't see, there's no way, obviously, for someone like me to talk to him about it. You can't bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And so I have accepted that this is the route and this is his journey, and it's probably not going to end well, And so I'm curious about your relationship as you're working with people in the clinic. Do you have successes, or are you able to get some hopefulness across to people in your clinic?
Yeah, and that's what you try and do in a session, or you get them to notice where they're making progress. Because when you're in pain, you want it to go away. So instantly, the longer that you've been in pain, the longer it takes to go away.
Yeah.
And you just have to notice a little bit better, find things that make you a little bit better.
Yeah.
Things that make you have hope that you're going to get better. It's a lot about safety. So chronic pain can be a result of trauma, and it's like PTSD, things like that. And then, so that's a defense mechanism from this trauma. And then pain is trauma, stress, things like that. So just making them feel safe is where you start, and it's really calming down their brain waves so they can focus on one thing. And I usually bring it to the breath. Focus on in, out. And it's a switch. I mean, it's instant. I said, did you feel that? Yeah, I did. And it's pretty crazy. So you can just notice on these people that are so stressed and with chronic pain, their eyes are just going crazy when they close their eyes, because they have so much noise going on in their brain.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you have small victories, and it's hard not to take it personal, but you can't, you just do your best. And people have to kind of find it on their own, but I can give them suggestions or things like that, because they would then start to rely on you. So the more that they rely on something else, the more that they don't take accountability for what's going on.
Sure.
And the body and the brain, are perfectly built. We just have to hit the right switches.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and talk about you personally and your journey. So I was interested in your background with MoveNet, and I didn't realize, I mean, maybe you could give us a little bit of background in your own, I mean, you had a fall and a MoveNat fall, and you had your own experience with pain, right? And so can we just dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, so MoveNat, the first thing that I really liked was just the ground movement, different crawling and rolling and things like that. But also you can make your workout wherever you are, you know, so go out into nature and you do, you know, you jump up on a log, whatever, however many times, and you can, or like carry a log, carry a rock, and do rounds of that. But I was, so I was jumping up on a log and I fell. So I was jumping up on this log backwards, and my weight took me backwards, and I was in a creek bed. So it was like 5 feet off the ground, something like that. So I hit on my spine on a rock. And so, so I just had soreness, things like that. And it wasn't really painful, but after that, so I didn't realize it at the time that it may be because of this fall. I had all these thoughts of death, that I was going to die at any moment, and I was like scared to go to bed, things like that, and like just had a lot of noise in my brain.
How long after you fell? How long after you had the fall did those thoughts start, and was it throughout the day or just before bed, or
all day? Like, you know, so it was just noise, and then why am I thinking about, and I know all this stuff, you know, with the brain and things like that, and like, why can't I just stop thinking about this? And I didn't realize it at the time, but I probably had a concussion. And that's looking back probably, you know, a year and a half after that. Yeah, and so the longer it went on, the more I would try to stop thinking about it, and then when I wasn't thinking about it, I would think about that I wasn't thinking about it, and then just a loop. And then just discovering Wim Hof and breathing and meditation and cold exposure, things like that, and helped me to kind of turn off my brain, because meditation. Go ahead.
You just went and did your own research? Like, did your family and did your wife know about what was happening with you, or did you keep that to yourself?
Yeah, I did. And so I thought there was something going on, like I had a tumor or something, I don't know. And so I got checked out, and I was perfectly healthy. And yeah, so I didn't realize still until, you know, a couple years after. But the breathing I had already had some exposure with, but really started to do it every single day, morning, at lunch, and whenever I needed to. And then
what was the technique you used? What was the technique?
So Wim Hof breathing would be like 30. So the inhale is longer than the exhale. So it's in. So you're oversaturating your oxygen, and then you would breathe everything out and hold as long as you could till you felt like you needed to breathe. And what it was really doing was controlling your vagus response, your vagal nerve, which controls fight or flight. And that's what the cold exposure does as well, is that you're saying, no, I got this, I'm in control, rather than your brain is in control and getting you to stop moving, or, you know, creating this stress.
So we're both fans of Joe Dispenza, and he uses the analogy that the brain is for thinking and the body is for feeling. So when we can take control, like you're talking about, use our brain and our command center to control and tell the body, like treat it like a wild stallion who's come, you know, you're taming the body that's used to doing its own thing. So can we talk about the vagal nerve a little bit for people that maybe don't know about that, like what it is and how like your Wim Hof breathing affects that?
Yeah, so it's a cranial nerve. So it comes out of the brain, and then it innervates everything from your digest or your chewing, and then all the way your heartbeat, your respiratory rate, your digestion. So it goes all the way down from the brain. And then it also controls fight or flight, which shuts down all of this and gets you to get out of danger, basically. And
And if I'm not mistaken, it's the only nerve that actually wanders around like that, right? Like it's called the vagus nerve based on like vagabond, like the wandering nerve. So
Yeah,
it
it goes down
has
into the body.
branches.
And it's basically, it's the connection from the brain to the body. So I lost my train of thought.
No. It's just so fascinating that particular nerve. But to go back to Wim Hof, you were saying like you inhale longer than you exhale.
Yeah.
And
So,
that gives you control. That teaches you control.
So the inhale is stress. So it actually produces adrenaline. And then the exhale is calming. So the longer you can exhale, the safer and more in control you feel. So
we're recreating the stress response by that inhale.
Yeah.
And then because I've always learned that like if you exhale longer, the longer the exhale, the more relaxed you can become.
Yep.
And then if you need to focus, you focus on the inhale like that. So Wim Hof, which I'm not actually that familiar with, so I'm just asking questions based on my own selfish interest, is that you essentially are recreating both of those situations, a stress response followed by a relaxation response. Do I have that right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a panic attack, like a forced panic attack. And then you're like,
okay,
well, I'm in control. And then the longer that you can hold your breath, the more in control you are, and the more we're calming down the response, or the vagal response. And so it's polyvagal theory that, so it's with trauma and things like that, but being able to train the vagus nerve, basically like a muscle. So cold exposure, your first instinct is to get out of the cold. And
hell yeah.
No, I have to stay here. I'm in control. You're basically calming down that reaction and puts you more in control. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah. And I am a wuss.
It's all mindset. Like you could do it. If somebody was going to pay you $1 million, you could do it.
I'd be like, keep your million. I'm going to go by the fire. No, just kidding.
But it's also meditation because you can only focus on one thing.
Yeah.
And it was another thing. The cold exposure really got me to calm down my brain.
How long after the fall did you start practicing Wim Hof, and the cold exposure? Like, what was the time frame of that? So how long?
Probably a month or so.
Okay. How fast did it start working?
Instantly, but it was a process of just kind of going on, and at least a year or so. Yeah.
Can you take us just like a general, like through the year, like because I know personally, when you get that feeling that something is working, you're inspired to continue doing that thing, right? So that makes sense that you had an instantaneous like relief. Did the looping thoughts of death diminish immediately, or was
got less, but it was still there? So it was really just working it and doing it every day, and then moving on. And and then I discovered Joe Dispenza, and then that you can make these neurological connections, and you have to, the longer that it's been going on, the longer it's going to take to reprogram towards what you want. Yeah, but go ahead.
Oh, I have a question about like how much you can do in a day, right? So there's so many amazing teachers out there, Joe Dispenza, Wim Hof, and then you have two others that I want to ask you about that I'm not familiar with later on in the podcast. But like, how do you schedule your day? I mean, you have a full-time job, you have a family. So with your meditation, so you have a breathing meditation and cold exposure, how did you actually create a routine of doing that? Can you tell me about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's having a routine, like times that you can do it. So I would get up early and do it.
What time?
Like five or so. Outside if you can. And then at lunch, I have to do something, physical, and then doing breath work as well. So I still do that, to this day. And then, something in the evening when I can, schedule it around, like an hour workout or something, but more like, so they say, I think it's movement snacks, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of, exercise, and then usually finishing it with breath work.
So did you have to set your alarm to get up after? Do you have to set your alarm to get up at 5? Is it difficult to do that? Was it initially? I was just checking.
Yeah.
Some people, because like,
yeah.
So you set your alarm, you get your ass out of bed, and you go out of your bedroom.
Yeah.
Outside.
So go somewhere. There's a park near me, so I would usually go to the park.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's building the habit of getting up, and on days I don't have to get up, I can sleep in. There's only so much time in the day, and things that are important to you, you have to make time for, or they're not really that important.
Yeah.
And your mental health is the most important thing. Yeah, it's scary.
So that is a big scare. I mean, having looping thoughts of death, that just sticks with me. I always think about you when I go to meditate, about like how that is a big incentive to feel better,
But also something that gave me clarity was Felix, Feel Your System. His approach of that you have to come to terms with the fact that you are going to die.
Yeah.
And then, like what's possible, like, oh shit, I'm going to die. Why don't I, do what I can or do what I want to do. And then once you come to terms with that, it's very freeing. It's still scary. I mean,
so scary.
Who wants to die? But
I will tell you that when we go, so I am exploring a little bit about like death meditations, which sounds morbid, but I think let's just dig into the death talk for a second, because what'd you say? Let's do this death thing. No, seriously though, because so we live in a city, Mobile, Alabama, and when we ride these electric scooters to the tennis center, which is 2 miles away. And when you live in the city, there is constant light everywhere. Like there's street lights, there's parking lot lights, there's always light so that you can kind of see your way through where you're going. But when we ride our scooters home through this swampy part of the city, so there's the tennis center, and then it's 2 miles home, and probably about a mile of that ride is kind of like it's paved, but it's through this like wooded, swampy, dark area where there are no lights. And I have been experimenting with turning off my headlight, and when I do that, and it's just the swamp is so flat and so calm, and it's so reminds me about mortality and how we're gonna fucking die. And I get so scared, but I force myself to just like calm my breath and try to allow myself to be there, through that fear, because it's mostly, oh no, Jeff Shub, the Urban Barefoot, he's got me all like wired up to feeling my emotions now. And I get all sad because I love living, and I love my family, and I love my life. And no matter how challenging it is through a pandemic and stuff, I love it here. And so I force myself to kind of think about what you're saying. Like we have a finite amount of time. Why not, practice living better? So I just wanted to say thank you for having the death conversation with me, because not very many people are equipped or are willing to talk about it. It seems like weird to discuss in our Western culture.
Yeah, and it's everybody's fear. Everybody deals with it, but it is morbid to talk about. It feels morbid, but yeah.
But in other cultures though, they talk about it, and it's part of life, and it's like they celebrate a little differently around death.
And just an example, like yoga, the last pose, I think it's Shavasana, is the corpse pose. So you imagine yourself in your grave, like how much do these problems that you're having matter, yeah, it's freeing.
I want to come to your yoga class. I teach yoga, and in that particular corpse pose, I say it, but I never say imagine yourself in your grave, because people would never come back to my class.
Yeah, they usually don't. I mean, but that's what it's called. I don't know.
And that's what it's for. I mean, you're absolutely right. That is what that is the final stillness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to come to my class and teach Shavasana.
Just lay on the ground.
Okay. Yeah. And let it wash over you, right? Like, I think that's really what it is, though, because we can talk about the big death, but we can also talk about each moment, like in yoga, we talk about this a lot, like each pose, the beginning, the middle, and the death of each moment or each pose. And like, just coming back full circle to what you were saying is, how are you going to practice that beginning, middle, and then the death of that, the transition, essentially, the transition of the thing that you're doing. And so, yeah.
The death of the person you used to be to become the person you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
You have to let it go. Like a smoker becoming a non-smoker, you have to become a non-smoker.
You have to change who you are.
So you're not a smoker anymore. You're a different person.
Mm-hmm.
You're a non-smoker. Yeah.
Yeah. So take me to the next phase of your journey.
Okay. So I felt better, I've been feeling better. And then I just got really interested in Dr. Joe and brainwaves and control of the brain and different techniques to get in these flow states or calming down the brain. And also brain training. So working with Z Health, which is brain-based functional neurology. So targeting a certain part of the brain and using it to develop, athletics, and they work with chronic pain and things like that. So just really fascinated with the brain, and then also developing athletes and pitching and really trying everything on myself to find what works for me and having different options for different individual people, because everybody's different. And that's kind of where I'm headed now. And then being involved with the Foot Nerd program and the Foot Collective, and just helping to spread the message. So I do a lot in the clinic, and a lot of our clinicians are kind of catching on and, realizing that less is more, and we're really equipped with everything that we need.
I want to just go to pitching. How long have you been interested in pitching, and how did you get involved in a recreational baseball league? And then how does pitching, your Move Not Fall seems like it was a big incentive for you to start exploring brainwave patterns, meditation, breathing. And then did all that kind of come together because you've always been involved in baseball, or how did all these things sort of meld into your pitching exploration?
So I started researching baseball leagues, I guess it was that year. And I think I played that year. And just to get me out of the house, I just had a son, and it was the same day every day, and I needed something to do. But I've always played baseball growing up. Mm-hmm. And I stopped playing baseball in 7th grade. And then I went back to it in sophomore year. And I basically was way behind. So the school that I was at, I got cut from the team. And I decided to move to a different school to pursue baseball and play. So I played my junior and senior year. And then I played in like a college summer league for about 4 or 5 years after high school. And then just developed playing against competition. Mm-hmm. And I was self-taught basically. So finding the different coaches and different books to read and things like that, and trying and experimenting on my own, which I've always done, I guess, looking back. And then, so starting playing 2 years ago, I wasn't having the success that I wanted, and I was having arm pain. And I was like, I'm going to really dive into this and get as good as I can. And so I started reaching out to different coaches and, learning as much as I could and experimenting. And I just love it. And it's awesome. So you can see the work that you put in pay off. Mm-hmm. And it's also fun.
Yeah, you're like so many other foot nerds I talk to, where it's just, you love to learn and you have so much curiosity. And So talk about the Z Health. So you figured out like how the Wim Hof affects your body. You started to dig into Joe Dispenza. Then you talked about Z Health, which I'm not familiar with, and also the WEC method. I'm interested in stacking, and I'm really interested in this rotational training. So can we talk about these, like how they fit
Yeah.
into your life? And
So it seems like everything led to different things. So I started working with coaches. So I worked remotely with a guy in San Diego, which is their place was right down the street from WEC method. The WEC method is David WEC is the inventor of the Bozu ball. So the blue ball, the half ball.
Mhm.
So from him making that and getting royalties off that, he went into explaining human movement and like how elite athletes move, like what are they doing that makes them so elite. So he delved into all these concepts and things like that, and then developed tools to kind of showcase those. But it's really rotational movement. So rotational movement is really just from one side to the other, and really movement is the figure eight pattern. There's only two options in and out, and that's all related with the brain, because it moves, or the body moves best in one way. And the more we can work with the body, the better it's going to move. So the ropes. So TFC Australia just put out, and they made their own rope. So he's been exploring it on his own. So it's pretty incredible. So he's doing it on the beam. He's doing the ropes, and it just looks
neat. I haven't seen that.
effortless. And it is a meditation. So I really enjoyed the ropes. So I work with the ropes every day, and it's just movement. It's how the body moves most efficiently. And then,
can I just tell you about this? I just am now making this connection. I'm so sorry I keep interrupting you. I get so excited to talk about this stuff. But in tennis, Matthew, my partner, he has all kinds of cool tools. And I noticed that he was using this plastic or this rubbery silicone handle. It kind of is like maybe that long, and it has like these two tennis ball shaped like rubber balls at the end of it, and then he uses that in this like rotational movement for the tennis swing. And he used to pitch in baseball too, and he says that the motions are so similar. And I didn't use that for the longest time because I tried it once and I bunked myself in the back of the head, and those rubber balls are like really heavy, and I was like, this is beyond my skill set. But recently I started using it, and within one match my serve became from mediocre to kind of badass for my level. And I think it was just from that rotational, like that training of that heavy weighted rubber rope.
different input, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, interesting.
And then one of their other philosophies is just being able to use tools to get better. So like humans were developed by using tools to accomplish a task or things like that. So it's not like a dogma, but it's using these tools to express movement, things like that.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
He's a genius. Really would recommend any of the free videos on YouTube.
Okay.
But the ropes are just great. So they're basically a meditation. So it's rhythm, it's risk of danger. Like you said, you hit yourself in the head. So you got to avoid hitting yourself in the head. So you got to pay attention. So it makes your brain pay attention rather than we're just going through the motions.
Yeah.
And you were saying something about failing. You have to fail to make new connections. That's how you get better, not doing the same things that you're good at.
Yeah. That's really cool. I'm going to look into that WEC method. Well, and I mean, like, even if you don't take a class or something, it just makes sense if you just experiment with the body, right? So like, I noticed that, like you're saying, when I warm up, if I just go through a routine warm up, it's fine. I mean, it's not like it's bad, and it's probably better than not doing anything at all before I go play tennis. But having a tool, or like using a weight or a kettlebell, or having something, or like carrying groceries or picking up a rock, the body, if you just slow down and pay attention, loves to move shit around, like with and in the rhythmic fashion, right? So like even just like dancing is all kind of spirals and movements, like unless you're doing the robot like I like to do, but it doesn't.
Rhythm, dancing, yeah. So the brain loves rhythm because
Mhm.
it's predictable. And then we can just kind of just let our body move in the way that it's supposed to.
Mm.
And so WEC Method is in San Diego. And then right down the street, S10 Fitness, Chris Daly, who recently just passed, which is really sad, introduced me to Z Health, which is, I think it's based in somewhere in California, somewhere else, but it's brain training. It has a lot to do with the eyes, so eye movements, and then also vestibular, so head movements, keeping your eye on the target as you move your head.
Mm-hmm.
And that the brain basically controls your posture, and that it's not like a mechanical thing. Like we can basically reset the body by targeting a certain point. So just really about the feet and eyes for posture. So it's really just fascinating. I don't know. So
Yeah.
I've only scratched the surface, but the visual exercises are really beneficial, and they have a few really good products called the Breath Gym, the Balance Gym, Vision Gym, and what's the other one? Strength Gym. But just so rather than just exercises, like why are we doing this?
Mm-hmm.
They work a lot with like circles, so proprioception. So if you're in your playing tennis, so you would go into your serve and you would do circles, 10 circles here to map this in your brain. Different things like that. Or we could do figure eights. Just that control is going to map it in your brain.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah.
How about, can you explain more? So the vestibular nerve is also a cranial nerve that has to do with balance.
Yep. Balance.
So, and an eye movement, right? So like, that's why,
cranial nerves. So direct inputs to the brain. And yeah, so your eyes are a direct input to your brain. So seeing it. So the homunculus, how much each part of your body takes up in the brain. So hand-eye coordination is very important. It takes a big chunk of your brain because you use your eyes and your hand to do everything, or else when you're eating, you'd hit your face.
Yep.
We're always looking. We never think about it.
And so when you're using the eye training, I mean, obviously for pitching, Nick and I were talking about this podcast yesterday, and he was saying about like how he's just so amazed about the pitching part where you just zone in on one, you can get that ball right into that one little square or rectangular parameter. And so the eye training, can you give an example of like what that could look like as part of your routine, like warm up or something?
Yeah, so I work with, so I'll put like a big medicine ball on a bucket and it has writing on it. And so I will zone in and actually read what's written on it to focus. And then really just focusing on a target is really hard. You look at it and then you look away, like right at the last minute, or the last second. So that's where it would apply to pitching more, being able to focus on one target. But with batting, you have to be able to track the ball into be able to hit it, and that you actually don't see it at contact. So you're predicting where it's going to be, and then you swing. And so I do a lot of, they do a pencil push-up, so where you're working on crossing your eyes and having your eyes come together. And some people, it doesn't happen. So that can cause issues. So if we can train that to come in, it's going to help you be able to focus on something. So I'll work on watching it all the way in. And then you look at a point, like 200 feet away. So going from near to far, get your eyes tracking. Yeah.
So, okay. So to bring that to like what happens in tennis. So for me, when I go to throw a baseball or a softball, I can only imagine that this would be so helpful, because I will get it like one time, like right in the zone. and people will think like I'm an elite genius. And then the next 20 times I throw it clear the hell, and everybody needs to be ducking because it will be, so it's, and then with tennis, what I've noticed is that it has that same quality of like in batting, where you're watching the tennis ball come into the racket, and they teach you like anytime, like you should watch the ball hit through the ball, don't look across the net to see where it's going. And at first it took me the longest time to realize that I wasn't watching the ball all the way onto my racket. When I started focusing on just seeing the ball come to the racket and then not focusing on where it's going, I mean, my shots improved so much. Like my accuracy improved, I started hitting the ball obviously less on the racket and the handle and more in the sweet spot. But I think like that eye training, I've done even just a couple of little exercises like with eye yoga, like, training from like near to far. And what I'm noticing is that it translates so much into my other parts of my life. Like all of a sudden my coordination is just so much better in other areas of my life. And I swear to God, I think my brain, what Joe Dispenza talks about, nerves that fire together, wire together, and you build networks of neurons that then just move to other parts of the brain so that everything gets better. So I guess my point is like training in these types of ways, like first of all, it's fun because it's a challenge for everything you're talking about. Sounds like so much more fun to me than going to the gym and slinging weights, even though that's great. But I don't mind doing that, but I don't do that. But this kind of thing, like you can just mess around with any time, like you can set a routine, or you can play around with these methods all throughout your day when you have 5-minute break and stuff. So
yeah, especially being on a computer, like you're looking at the same distance. So being able to look at different distances throughout the day, or you do some pencil push-ups, or even just closing your eyes and giving yourself a break. But it's just really interesting. So the eyes have muscles, so you can train these muscles to work better, but also that it has different parts of the brain it affects for different places that you're looking. And then also if your eyes are fixed on something and then moving your head. So that's fascinating to me. Like I've barely scratched the surface. It's very in depth, just the wiring of the body. But also with like stacking. So like standing on the beam, single leg stance, we can play around with where we're looking. So, we're looking up for 60 seconds. And so we have to stabilize from there, or looking at like an eye chart and you're reading off the eye chart or words, things like that. So it's stimulating different parts of the brain. And it is fun, but it can be very targeted to solve a specific issue.
Yeah. And combining fun with solving a specific issue, it ensures that people will stick to something that they're doing, that they will probably be more likely to have a routine if it's fun and it's also solving problems. In yoga, I do this one thing where we get into tree pose, and then so you're standing on one leg and the other leg is up, on the calf or on the thigh. And then I have people when they feel stable just doing that, with the hands at the center or on their hips, then we take our arms out to the side like that while you're standing on one leg, and then I have them just gently rotate their head right and left to look at either thumb. And I mean, it's so amazing how people shock themselves and how that failure that happens right away, and then they want to keep doing it. Like they it's like the brain wants to solve the problem. And I swear sometimes we'll do tree pose like that in different ways, where like then you bring your arms up overhead and you look at your thumbs, and then you make it progressively more have it be progressively more complicated, harder problem to solve. And we could have 15 minutes go by just with tree pose.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And it tells you things if you go into these positions and you feel something. So if you feel dizzy when you look up and to the left, there's something going on with that region of the brain where you're processing that. Or, older people, they don't look around much, they don't get in these head positions. And then when they do, they get really dizzy and, get scared of falling. So it's a really good tool to kind of diagnose things that are going on, a response from the brain from being in these positions.
Yeah. You bring up older people, and I mean, I think that is such, there's so much possibility for people, just a rotating of the head left and right, and getting, people get so frightened of falling. And I have worked with a guy who lives in our complex, and he walks all the time, Bryton, but he is still a big fall risk, and he did end up falling and dislocating his shoulder. But I could just tell, like, he's just so stiff through his whole, like, all these senses that are key in maintaining balance, right?
Looking down at the ground, looking for things that you're going to trip on. Then you get
Mhm.
really rigid, so we don't have any rotation when we walk. Then we're basically just walking through our back.
Yes.
Your back hurts and your knee hurts.
Yeah, the shuffle. You start to shuffle.
So, those basic competencies of being able to crawl, to be able to roll, like we should be able to do these until the day we die.
Exactly.
And if not, working on those will help you move better and walk better.
Yeah.
That's how we build the motor cortex of your brain, is through movement. And so if we don't use it, we lose it.
Yeah.
So
And
people
it seems,
crazy,
yeah,
what?
and people
Rolling,
think
rolling,
it's,
what?
I know. And they think it's harder than it is too. I think that's, don't you agree? Like, it seems like people think that there's a lot more involved than just doing simple
Well, they
motions.
just don't think it's beneficial. Like, why would I do that? It's actually really hard, to roll intentionally, roll down a hill in control. So you're basically controlling your spine first. Crawling, we're protecting the spine and moving efficiently.
Where do you start with somebody who's older and in that position where they don't have any motion through their torso or their neck? Like, where do you just start with them so that they feel hopeful?
That's a deep question.
Okay.
It depends.
It depends on the person, right? Always.
Like we always say, like, meet them where they're at,
Mhm.
and like interest, suggest different things.
Mhm.
More about standing and getting better at weight shift and standing up tall, standing through your hips. And I like to start people laying on their stomach to get them spread out and lengthened out to start with. And then bridging is like the most basic. So bridging is going to help you to stand better, to control your weight with your butt, basically.
Oh, that's interesting.
But yeah,
Okay.
it depends, what they're into, and you find things that you can relate to people with, or, make analogies, especially like for their profession. You try and relate things to what they understand.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of good stuff, Bryton. Okay, so where are we now? I wanted to talk about culminating everything you put. I took some notes on your whiteboard description, and you had this section called between pitching, and I thought it was interesting for people who might be interested in this conversation. You have like your routine, like you go through a cleansing breath, you focus on your equal weight, and so maybe just before we wrap up with an actual breathing exercise, you could take us through that between pitching routine that you do. I like that. Because I'll tell you why I like it. I like it because it could be applied to anything that you do in life, right?
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah. So, repeatability, the more you practice it, the more it becomes automatic. So basically doing the same thing every time. So in between each inning, I try and have about 10 breaths while they're throwing the ball around and bringing it to me, and to focus and center, and then walk up to the mound, and then look down at my feet, and it's left foot, right foot, and then equal weight. And then I'm going to find a rock on the ground and really focus in on that rock, and then bring my hands together and look at the glove and take the sign, take a breath, keep focusing on the glove, and just let it fly.
Knuckleball.
So yeah. So, and then point and throw, point at your target, hit your target. So, you know, the more that you're thinking about it, the more, you know, it can go awry.
Yeah, I love
But
that.
I practice that in practice. And then I practice it, I shoot free throws. So I do the same thing, left foot, right foot. Look at the net, boom, breath, just go. So lots and lots of practice.
So we put the patterns into the brain and the body, let them work together, and then when the time comes, it all becomes automatic. Like, I mean, neuromuscular, it's in us. We are that. We know that thing, and so it just is a repetition of success.
Well, automating it, you know, like atomic habits.
Mm-hmm.
Just the more that you practice it, the more it becomes automatic. And then you know, you can fine tune that. Like if you're not having success, you know, switch up a little bit as you go.
And I do think you can apply that to anything in life. I mean, I don't always do it because I'll get like kind of rattled about something, and then I'll forget that there are tools in my toolbox that I can use that are like that. And I noticed that, like, coming full circle back to the beginning of our conversation about having specific for sports where you have these types of skills, where you have to utilize these specific, like, hand-eye coordination type sports where there's tools involved, I think is so valuable. So with tennis, when I get frustrated because I hit the ball too many times into the net or something, having the routine of offloading stress or frustration and bringing yourself back to the center, the present moment. At first, Matthew would say, you have to find some routine that you can, like, let that go. And I thought to myself, I got this, like, I know how to let shit go. And then I didn't have a routine, and I couldn't let it go. It would just kind of ruminate back there as I would continue to play. But then all of a sudden I found something, like, there's these little dampeners that are in the tennis racket that's made of like silicone. And I rub that a couple times. I kind of shift it around and I turn my racket like 3 times, and then I get set. And it is so helpful, but not only on the tennis court, but I'll even imagine that, like, when I get rattled about something in my daily life, I'll just touch the little dampener in my head, I'll turn the racket, and then I'm set and I'm ready to go again. And it really helps so much. So I think these types of sports that we indulge in like the parts of our life, like after college, recreationally, can provide so much, not only just fun and community and meditation and mindfulness, but it just adds this richness and this depth of psychological training and mental training into my daily life. So I am so glad that you agreed to have the conversation.
Yeah, it's fun. It makes it fun that you're working towards something rather than we're just going to the gym and
yes. Oh, well said. Well said. I think that's exactly it, is that I'm excited to go and actually do something that's going to be that's like a thing, a tangible, result oriented thing.
Return on, I did this.
Yeah. Well, do you want to, okay, so I have we thought we would go through an actual exercise together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I have the video queued. How should I do it? Should I just play it and then we'll do it together, or do you want to introduce it?
I can introduce it. So it starts right away, but it's Wim Hof is taking you through the breaths. So you just follow along with the breath and you try and sync up to the rhythm. So it's in, out, and just keep doing it until Dr. Joe Dispenza starts talking. And that's when you breathe out and you pause and you try not to think about, I need to breathe, and just try and listen to Dr. Joe and what he's saying and focus on that. And you just go to whenever you can comfortably go to, where you feel like you need to breathe, and just gently breathe in, and then you can continue to listen to what he's saying as you just gently breathe. And there's 3 rounds of it, and it's really a refresh. So I do it at lunch pretty much every day, just to kind of shake off the morning.
Okay, so I have never done this before. I've seen the
Okay.
video, but I haven't experienced it myself. So what I thought, so one round is probably how long would you say?
5 minutes or 2 to 5 minutes, I think.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's wrap up and say our goodbyes now for those of you that want to sign off and come back to this later. And we will, and then we'll close up our talk right now, say thank you to everybody who's listening. And if you have any questions, we're always here to answer. We'll put some links in the show notes to the WEC method and the Z method and some of the trainings we talked about. And until next time, which I hope, Bryton, we can do this again. We'll sign off for those of you that want to stay and go through one round, about 5 minutes. We're going to start now. And I'm going to share. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Instagram, Own the Zone Pitching. If you have any questions on anything, or if you need some coaching or problem solving, and
yeah, so I'll put all of Bryton's information in the show notes too, so you know where to find him, because he is a wealth of knowledge, foot nerd, and we're so happy to be here with you all. So thanks for tuning in.
Absolutely, it was great.
So great, Bryton. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen then, and we'll go for one round.
You want to make sure you're sitting or laying down. I wouldn't do it standing.
Oh, okay.
Laying down probably first.
Okay, so say that one more time, Bryton, to our friends.
So if you're not sure of how you're going to respond, I would lay down to do this.
Okay.
I think you should be good, Ruth.
We'll see. I'll stay. We'll find out. I have never done Wim Hof because I was a little bit nervous. Like, I'm nervous to hold my breath. So this is going to be, I'm really interested in trying this.
And then just breathe out and just try and be still and try and listen to what he's saying.
Okay. So I will really follow I'll follow the instructions. And then when we're done, can we talk about it for a minute?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And then for those of you that are listening, don't do this while you're operating heavy machinery.
Good disclaimer.
Get out of the car.
For sure.
Yeah, this is not for driving or tractoring or anything like that. So make sure you're in a place where you can be distraction free. And here we go.
I can't hear it. Is it on?
Okay. Hold, please. I did not share my sound. And I'm going to mute I guess I need to mute myself so you don't hear me breathing like a fiend. Hang on one second. Okay, so I need to go back. Pause. More. Okay, so this should, tell me if you can hear it now, Bryton.
30 times.
Yep.
stop.
Yeah, we have a huge frontal lobe, and it's 40% of our entire brain. And most people, when they have a thought, they just think that that's the truth. And I think one of my greatest realizations in my own journey was just because you have a thought doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So if you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day, and we do, and 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before, and you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, your life's not going to change very much, because the same thought leads to the same choice leads to the same behavior creates the same experience, and the same experience produces the same emotion. And so then the act of becoming conscious of this process to begin to become more aware of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, it's called metacognition.
When you feel the urge to breathe, you breathe in fully and keep it for 10-15 seconds. Then that's one round. Fully in and keep it. And now you press your belly, the neck, and then the head. And now you are able to tap into the brainstem. And yeah, that's him. 30 times.
And I forgot to tell you, you can get dizzy when you're breathing, and to just
I'm going to plug in my earphones.
breathe gently. I meant to tell you that you can get dizzy just breathing. So if you ever get dizzy, just kind of pause and relax with your breath.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Bryton, can you back up just a couple so we can see your eyeballs?
Yep, sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Because I just want to ask you a couple questions. So we didn't talk about this, but I saw you tapping. And I want to know if I did it right, because first of all, I unhooked my microphone because I didn't want to have heavy breathing into the microphone, but I don't think I did it fully. So I followed what he did, which was I inhaled and exhaled, like, yeah.
You can even breathe through your mouth. So he's not specific with what you have to do. So
Okay.
ultimately you would want to do it through your nose, diaphragmatic breathing,
Okay.
but it's okay to breathe through your mouth as well.
Okay. And then when Dr. Joe Dispenza started talking, I started holding my breath.
Yep. So you breathe everything out.
Okay.
And you try and pause rather than. So you're just going to pause.
Okay. So
And
I think
then
I did that.
like, you're freaking out, like, I'm not breathing. So that's the first thing. So the tapping gives you something else to focus on. So you're just focusing on that, and you won't even think about it. And you can go, up to 2 minutes without breathing. Okay. The more that you practice it, the easier it is to do, and the more rounds, the easier it is.
Okay. So yeah, so the brain likes something novel to do. So the tapping gives your brain something to do while your body is adjusting.
Yep.
Okay, so
go ahead.
No, just thank you, and whatever you have to say before we close.
So the longer you can hold your breath, the more in control you are of your nervous system, basically. So it's saying, I'm in control. Let's do this.
Okay.
And that's what I've really been working on, is breath retention. And it's hard.
Yeah, I'm going to have to practice.
It's like euphoric almost.
Yeah, I could kind of even tell that, like just from the breath hold, that there's a feeling of exhilaration that happens. I could sense that, but I'm sure I didn't tap into at all what is possible. But I'm going to before we chat again. Can we do this again in a month or so?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Bryton.
Yeah, it was great to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you too. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to do this together. So thank you all for listening, and any feedback, we'll let you know where to get in touch with us, and Bryton too from Own the Pitching Zone.
Own the zone. And
I know, Own the Zone. I always do that.
Thank you, Nick, for setting the foundation for us to meet, and this global community of awesome people.
Yeah, we have the best chief nerd of all.
Yeah.
He's a badass. Thanks, Nikki Pop. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording and then we'll chat. Ciao, everyone.
Ciao.